Welcome to the Cherry Picker, the horror movie podcast where we like to kill people, but not really. I'm your host, Zack Cherry, and with me as always is...
Eddie of Edward is Truth.
And today we're celebrating St. Patrick's Day by talking about Leprechaun, released January 8th, 1993. And that's everything you need to know because it's an early January release movie, which I guess doesn't mean anything anymore, but, you know, back then, probably.
Back in the day, probably.
And not to throw you under the bus here, but I know for a fact that you did this was your suggestion, so I just because I know in the past I accused you
because I had access to it, not because I'm like, oh my god, let's do my favorite movie. Don't throw me under that bus.
No. Okay, but that's what I wanted to say. Just I'm not trying to throw you under the bus here, but you chose this, and I just want to know: was it just seasonal, or did you really want to talk about Leprechaun?
It was because I had access to it, and then I think it got stripped off of Netflix, so I ended up renting it off Redbox anyway. So it's all good. Yeah, well, I mean, I was long overdue. Actually, let's just get right into it, because I was long overdue for a rewatch with it. Haven't seen it since the 90s. I think maybe 94 or 95. Oh, wow. And yeah, and I remember it was one of the franchises my sister and I dipped into after we had completed the Nightmare on Elm Street. We were renting all the Nightmare on Elm Streets, made our way through that. We tried Friday the 13th, and she ducked out after 3. She was like, I can't do this. I don't like these movies. I was like, all right. So I finished them myself as far as I could.
She ducked out of Friday the 13th or Leprechaun?
Yes, out of Friday the 13th.
So where does she stand on Leprechaun?
Well, okay, this is the thing. We were like, well, what would you like to do? Because she's like, I don't know. I heard Leprechaun, whatever. And I'm like, okay, let's watch Leprechaun. So because I'm down to watch whatever, at this point. It's like, let's go to as long as it's at our Blockbuster, let's rent it and watch it. So we rented it. We watched it. We did get through the second movie. I don't think we made it to the third movie together. I actually can't even remember if I've seen. Is the third one Vegas?
I
don't remember.
So.
Anyway.
I have the box set that has 1, 2, and 3. And I don't know. These are movies that I like. If it's boring, I will fall asleep to a movie. That's and this I haven't seen this in probably 10 years. This was the third time I'd seen it. But do people like this, or is the general consensus that Leprechaun is a piece of garbage? Because I don't like. I don't want to upset any people who might hold this in high regard.
I think that Warwick Davis is the component that's held in high regard, and rightly so. I would never begrudge Warwick Davis his due, but I do have to say, I think when people talk about this movie, and I think this, as is the case with a lot of kind of slasher franchises of the bygone eras of the 70s, 80s, and 90s, when people talk about the movie, they're really talking about the franchise. I don't hear a lot of Leprechaun 1 only talk. You know what I mean? If I hear any Leprechaun talk at all. But
which is funny because between you and I, we clearly haven't watched past the third entry.
Yeah.
So I don't know if people are talking about it that they've seen. I think there's 8 in total.
I think there was a reboot too, wasn't there? And I didn't see that.
Yeah, there's a reboot that came out in 2018. So
I still have to see it.
And it's predominantly been straight to video, straight to DVD,
which is fine.
I don't even know what we call that when it's straight to like a home release.
Streaming,
what do we call that now?
Streaming debut? I don't know.
But I mean, just
now
they're like back straight to Blu-ray.
It was. Yeah, right. But is anything straight to Blu-ray and not streaming now? I mean,
I guess now it'd be 4K.
Originals now.
But I don't think this is available in 4K. Look, here's the thing. Like, just in terms of like what we've kind of generally done with these podcasts, like I don't think that there's a way we can talk about this movie that, because I mean, like obviously this is not a good movie. And this is, because of that, like, this is very low-hanging fruit. I don't want to just, like, pick it apart for, like, stupid things. So, I mean, like, well, whatever notes you've taken, like, we'll say that. But I don't know if you want to, like, just go through, like, a play-by-play of the movie and just comment on, like, the absurd, stupid shit that's in it. Because I think that's the most, like, fun part of them, if there is a fun part of the movie, just like not even like, oh, look how badly they fucked up here, because it's like they knew what kind of movie this was that they were making. Like there's it's not like a Halloween Kills where we could go through that and be like, well, that was a mistake, or
Right. I actually have a few questions for you, which we'll also unpack along the way. But I have one that I want to ask. But after I watched, sometimes I'll look for like promotional material just to see how did they. I was around, so I remember how they tried to sell it, and I remember the commercial. I don't remember the trailer. I remember the TV commercial, and all I remember about it is when Francis from Pee-wee's Big Adventure falls on, puts his ear near the crate and the hand busts out. And I remember I was young enough where that still was kind of like, ooh, that could be scary. And then
for us who don't watch Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yeah.
So who's this?
Francis is Ozzy.
Okay.
The chubby, not smart guy.
I have questions about him for you too, but
I know
continue.
We'll get into that. We'll get into that. But okay. But I also remember the very end of every commercial I saw for this movie when it was being released in theaters was they had a shot of Warwick Davis like turning around in, like almost in silhouette, but haloed kind of with the light behind him, shooting like green energy out of his finger, and then it's just a Leprechaun rated whatever the fuck it was rated, maybe R, I don't know. Probably, and he just goes, I need me gold, and that was the last thing, and it made it look really kind of dark and actually like a slasher, so I look for promos, like just interviews, like maybe that I missed, to see how did Jennifer Aniston feel about it, who was on the press tour, who wasn't, and I couldn't find anything on YouTube. I could only find interviews with Warwick Davis at like conventions now, and Jennifer Aniston with semi-recent interviews where people ask her about it, and I don't know how I feel about that.
What does she say?
Because okay, she's sitting there. It was the weirdest clip ever, because it opened with like this man talking about leprechauns and finally a movie got it right or something, talking directly into the camera, and then it goes Leprechaun, and then there's Jennifer Aniston just sitting there, kind of randomly, and they ask her, "Did you? What attracted you to this movie?" And she was just like, "Oh my gosh, like how did you feel when you knew you got that role?" She's like, "Oh, I felt I hit the ceiling. I thought I'd, hit the jackpot. I mean, Warwick Davis from Willow." And I'm like, kind of like, "Oh, okay, that's kind of sweet." But then she goes on to say and of course there was a script that was just divine. I mean, this character was so layered. There were so many. She was so multifaceted and had so many opportunities for me to play so many different levels, and it was such a challenge. And I'm like, you're being sarcastic. And I thought it was kind of mean, because I was like, I wouldn't mind if she'd opened only with talking about the movie and the role that way, because she's right.
So this is recent.
She opened with This is recent. Yeah. This is like the last 10 years or so.
Yeah.
And she was talking about, but she opened with Warwick Davis, and I was just kind of like, oh shit, don't shit on Warwick Davis. And maybe she wasn't. I'm sure she was talking sarcastically just so she'd have an out if people took her seriously. She was like, obviously I was joking, and if somebody thought she was being sarcastic about Warwick Davis, she could be like, no, I meant every word I said, just kind of cover her ass. So anyway, that kind of bothered me. But I did want to ask you, because it was kind of the thing that remained in my head. I didn't remember much about this movie, having not seen it in so many years. I wanted to know, what did you remember going back in this viewing? Like, what did you remember from your previous screening?
I don't know. I just remember that I didn't like it. But again, like, the thing is that because I haven't seen it in 10 years, and just because, we have been revisiting movies that, we haven't seen in a while, that I thought, okay, maybe I'll have a new perspective. But I mean, everything that I remembered about it before, I didn't, it was just the same thing. Okay, this is my kind of take on Leprechaun, is that it feels like one of those Disney Channel movies of like the 90s, where it's a kid's movie. It's totally a kid's movie, but then they're like, well, let's put gore in there and just make, and some swear words and stuff, and make it horror, because the whole thing plays out like it's just it could be next to your Lindsay Lohan Parent Traps or whatever, or even earlier than that, just Disney movies of an era gone by.
Right, and that's exactly what happened too.
It's so it's just so basic. There's nothing like really horrifying about it, but there's just like all these like bumbling characters and like just stupid shit like that. That's kind of like why my brain shuts off when I watch it. And I'm just like, I did actually. While I was watching it today, I did nod off a few times, but I didn't miss anything. Like I got the basic gist of it. Right. And then I went back and just like I probably lost 2 minutes collectively. So don't think that I didn't pay that close attention. But I read the plot summary and just like, okay, yeah, I didn't miss anything here. But this was the third time I'd seen it because I don't know if you remember this. This was like probably like either like the late 90s or like early 2000s. There was this DVD release of like a compilation of all these horror movies from like anywhere between the 70s and the 90s. And I think it was like called the Boogeyman Collection or something. I'd have to look up the exact thing, but they would throw in like 3-minute clips from all these movies. So there would be stuff from Hellraiser.
Boogeyman. It was called Boogeyman.
Yeah, it was like one of the Hellraiser movies, one of the like Leprechaun, even and Candyman, like just everything. I think there was even like Jack Frost, just random things, just to give you a collection of just like who all these killers were. So there's like obviously Jason. I think that they used the Jason from Jason Goes to Hell too, which was just like, why did you use that? But they had the scene in this movie where he's like pogo sticking the guy to death. Yeah. And I just looked at that, I'm like, okay, this is really ridiculous. But me being like probably like 15 or 16 at the time, I'm just like, okay, like this is like slasher movies. So like at some point I'm going to watch this. And it wasn't until I did purchase that 3-disc, like 3-movie DVD that had 1, 2, and 3 that I saw it for the first time. And I just remember being like, I don't particularly like this. And then I watched it again a few months later because I had some friends over and, I just had like this huge horror movie collection, which I mean, like I still do, which is even bigger now. Yeah. And they're just like, oh yeah, I want to watch something. And for some reason they're just like, Leprechaun, put that on. I'm just like, no. But yeah, we watched it and that was like, up until this experience, the last time I had put it on, and it's like everything came back to me. I'm just like, yeah, this is not a good movie. I think like the highlight is that, and like the way I can view it is just like, oh, it's like the prequel to Friends of just like Rachel before she met who's the guy that she's married to at the beginning in the pilot episode. Barry.
Was it Barry?
I think so.
Yeah, it's Barry.
Just like this is like pre-Barry Rachel.
But post nose job. Her dad is much more kind of like relenting than her father on Friends, but that's pretty much it. Like kind of a little nightmare.
Can we talk about the father? Okay, because her relationship with the dad here, like when I looked at them, I'm just like, so this is his teenage daughter. I mean, like first of all, she's I think 24 in this, but it's just like. Yeah. She doesn't look like she's not dressed like a teenage girl.
No,
she doesn't she has a cell phone and all this stuff, and she seems like a really high maintenance like mistress or like younger girlfriend of this man. Absolutely, and I just I don't get father daughter from them at all. And she's just like, I can't stay here. This is disgusting. Sort of like, I'm going to go make a reservation at the hotel. And it's just like, you're a child. Like, you don't make reservations.
But she's like in LA, like, I don't know if is she native? Like, I don't know, but she's all about LA. Like, that's what she saw in her head.
Well, I mean, like,
and LA's, they're jet setters,
Yeah. Well, she's a child of divorce.
She's a clueless girl.
It seems like they don't really establish that or even her character or anything, but it's like she's staying with her dad for the summer. And it's just like the fact that this guy doesn't have like just the ability to read the situation or her and just know that like this is probably not the best fit for my daughter for like a bonding experience for me and my daughter over like the summer where it's just like clearly like this is not what she's about. And he kind of like he does like give in to her like really early because he's like, okay, let's go. And because she meets Nathan, or whoever, and then she's like, no, we're gonna stay.
Nathan.
And I don't know if that she's wants to stay because she's attracted to him or because he like challenged her or something, and now she has she has to prove herself as a strong, capable, layered.
Well, it's hard. Character. It's hard to tell because the two actors don't have any chemistry. Jennifer Aniston, the actor who plays Nathan,
who was in April Fool's Day.
Yes, with Amy Steele. But and he looks better now. But
like
anyway,
now, as in Leprechaun.
Like his most recent headshot. No, like his most recent headshot.
Okay.
I saw on IMDb. I was just like, oh, look at you, Silver Fox. So there's that.
Yeah.
But no. But he shows up and immediately starts like just. I guess we could call it challenging. Other people might just call it insulting and mansplaining and being hostile and microaggressions. You know, like a lot of words we have, you know, in our vernacular now that are just kind of like mainstream and commonplace. But I think then they were just supposed to be like an odd couple, you know, like,
it's like a meet cute.
She's she's superficial and, you know, like completely self-absorbed, and he's, you know, salt of the earth, and he tells it like it is. But they anyway, I think it's stupid. But if they had any chemistry, maybe that would kind of sell it, and they don't. So it's not charming. It's just kind of like, oh, these two again. But if we want to talk about like strengths, though, actually, I do have something to point out. As far as just the opening, like the very opening of the movie, that I was actually kind of enchanted by. Just the shaft of light opening on the staircase, and little Warwick Davis like stepping onto the stairs and finding his gold and the rainbow.
Was that like a castle or something?
Yeah, I guess it was like some another bygone era. That's the term of the pod.
Because that was like, because when I saw that, because initially, like I watched that, and I remember that we get to the farmhouse and then the bulk of the movie's there, but I was just like, there's this like interesting prologue. I mean, not interesting in terms of just like what's happening, but just interesting in terms of like the setting. And I feel like I would have rather seen more of like the Leprechaun lore, or just like going back to like where he came from and shit like that, rather than just what we got.
Oh, okay.
But that was like a much better. It was almost like a promise of something that we didn't get in the movie, because it's just like setting us up for like, okay, here's this like it was really good lighting, and then just to be like cut to like back in America, and then 10 years later.
But see, even that, I didn't find fault with that, because I felt like, oh, I'm getting exactly what this movie is. It's just gonna like cut to the chase right from the get-go. Like, and also I appreciated from a filmmaking standpoint, because it was written and directed by Mark Jones. I appreciated Mark Jones' effort as far as just like kind of establishing a tone and making it feel like an actual movie, because I could see strategy. Like, he didn't reveal the makeup that Warwick Davis was wearing like too early. Like, he really took his time kind of like hiding his face from us, like he's the shark from Jaws or something. And I appreciated that, because
like the design of the character is one of the strengths of the movie for sure. Clearly, I mean, Leprechaun was like iconic enough to go on to be in like 7 more movies or whatever, however many it was. So, you know, they didn't fail on that front by any means.
Yeah.
But yeah, what else did Mark Jones do?
Oh, that I can't tell you. I didn't.
Okay, but you just know him from this. Okay.
I just know him from this because I saw that he had written and directed it, and I was like, oh, okay, so he either gets the credit or the blame, and I feel like he kind of gets both.
This was like he originally wrote it in the 80s.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure if that, like, I was just kind of like scrolling through the IMDb trivia here.
Yes.
But I'll see if I can find it. But that would make more sense, because like it says that like he had written this as a straight horror movie, and it wasn't until Warwick Davis came on and he's just like, no, we need to make this funny. And I mean, I don't know if that's like to the franchise's detriment, because clearly that's what this like sent it forward to, like what varying degrees of quality. But I can see this being successful if it was like Friday the 13th era, where they made like a straightforward horror movie with a leprechaun, and that being like popular enough to just like kind of make its way through like the rounds in the 80s and like get enough sequels under its belt to the point where it probably would have been more established, but just because like it debuted in 93, which was a horrible year for horror movies, by the way. Like one of the worst. And like mostly because of shit like this, but just because it showed up in a time where the slashers were already dying off, because like we were still 3 years away from Scream, that
and being censored. They were also being censored a lot.
It was
the
just
MPAA was not.
It was just too far past its time. So that's kind of like going back to what I was saying, is just like it did feel like one of those like Disney Channel movies because of like, you know, how are we going to like implement a slasher movie in this day and age? And that's...
I did see an interview with Warwick Davis where he was actually confirming everything that you've said. Or a lot of things that you've said, basically, about like the synthesis of the movie. Like he couldn't get a meeting with Mark Jones because Mark Jones had seen Willow and thought he was too likable and that there was no way he's going to be able to play like a Sinister character. And he had to convince him, like, I'm an actor. This is an opportunity to flex my muscles and show you like I can be something else, and to show now everybody. Because how many more opportunities am I going to get? Especially with like a name over the, not even name is the title role, but I think as a result, Mark Jones thought, well, but he's also got these comedy or like these lovable chops. Like I should make him more kid-like. I should make him more that, whatever. They shot the movie to be more family-friendly and more like, like you said, like a Disney kind of like thing. And then they realized the people who were attracted to it were looking for a horror movie. So they immediately had to put in like all of this extra, any gore or anything like that was put in after the fact, like the pogo stick, like impact, I guess. And even, what was the other one? Oh, the one with the fucking cop when he's, and this was it was terribly done. When the cop's like trying to look for him and he's just like popping up all over the place, and then finally, I don't remember what happens. Like he kills him. He kills him with the cop.
He twists his neck.
Yeah,
he jumps on top of him and then uses his brute strength to just like snap his neck.
None of that was in the original cut, so yeah, that was put in to make it more horror adjacent.
Well, because it's not very it's got a body count of 4. You've got the first one is the Mrs. O'Grady, and is this like, I know it's not his mother because she says like she's talking about his mother's ashes, but it's just like there seems to be like some sort of age discrepancy with the O'Gradys. But it's funny because
she doesn't have hair dye and he does.
Yeah, but he doesn't kill her. She just falls backwards down the stairs. So it's
she was an easy kill.
Yeah,
she was.
You just had to like startle. It was like the sergeant in Child's Play 3 where he just jumped out and gave him a heart attack.
Well, I had a bunch of questions with the opening, but they were all still kind of like endeared questions. I was still kind of like into the movie. I was like, oh, okay, here we are. Just the fact that like he's coming up the walk and she's just like, oh, Mr. O'Grady, what are you have for to? I mean, like literally like an Irish immigrant like around the turn of the century from the 1800s into the 1900s. And I'm just kind of like, does anybody talk like this much? Because she didn't even say. He's like, where is something? She's like, 'tis on top of the thing and the thing. And I'm like, do people still like in contemporary times say 'tis? I don't know. But
even because it's like takes place 10 years earlier in 1983. I just love the fact that she calls her husband Mr. O'Grady.
Mr. O'Grady. I thought maybe it was because he was in trouble. Like, oh, Mr. O'Grady, what are you doing? Because I was wondering, what is the relationship?
Who knows what their sexual like
proclivities are.
Just like, we don't need to explore that. That's a part of the movie that is best left passed over.
But I also had a question. Like he says, I made him show me where his gold is, and I'm like, how? Like that would have been interesting to find out. How can you make him show you where his gold? I mean, I guess this is where we get into like the Leprechaun lore though, because as far as I know, the actual lore.
Yeah.
Because I did a little research on that because I was just curious. I was like, shamrock or 4-leaf clover on top of a thing and that could kill them? Is that true? And I couldn't find anything. So I think that's purely engineered for the movie. Yeah. But some things that they got right, actually, were dressing him in red pants, because traditionally leprechauns, real leprechauns, were not affiliated with or associated with the color green at all, but they were associated
Let
with
me
the
turn
color
off my lights.
Red. Right?
For anyone watching, I got my green lights on.
It's appropriation in real time, folks. But
we should have done this entire podcast in just like the thick Irish accent.
I mean, I knew it, and I still wore kind of green, but anyway. But he had red pants on because they always have red somewhere about their person. They weren't like entirely decked out in it, but they could be. And the kind of leprechaun you could find always depended on the region, and they were predominantly mischievous fellows who did love to cobble shoes. That was their job. Like leprechaun came from, people believe it could have come from two different sources. There's one source that kind of sounds like leprechaun, that means shoemaker, and there's another source that means short person, and they both apply.
Well, it's like, as we see, he's got this like OCD habit of just needing to shine shoes.
Yeah.
And I don't understand, like, they used it to their advantage, but then it's like, you could have just kept doing, like, you could have used that as like sort of like a thing to bait him into a trap, or just tie
over and over and over.
Yeah, just like if anything, it's just like, okay, you can just go over and just like kick some dirt on the shoes, and then you keep him busy while someone else goes off and like tries to find a 4-leaf clover, and then like,
but also,
bam, you're done.
But they have that problem, that kind of like unsolvable problem of trying to shoot him, and he keeps like teleporting all over the room or whatever, and in different places, and then all of a sudden he's in a drawer.
Well, he's on the skateboard, just going back and
exactly
forth. Like, haha, look what I can do. God.
Yeah, but if you've got him cobbling shoes,
much,
why don't you shoot him when he's But if you've got him cobbling shoes, why don't you just shoot him while he's cobbling? He's in place and he can't leave.
Well, because like because he says at the beginning, because he's like, oh, like bullets aren't gonna stop me, and there's like some really weird, like blocking in that part, because it's like the O'Grady shoots him, and he says like you don't see him anymore. He's like hidden off screen, and he's like, oh, bullets won't kill me, they'll just slow me down a little. And then he goes over and it's like he picks him up and puts him in the crate. I'm just like, what's happening here? I don't, like, we're not really seeing it because it's like this dark basement. But that's when he puts him into the crate, and he's gonna burn him. Like, he's like gets the gasoline ready. So it's like, is that another thing of the lore, that like you can only, like, the 4-leaf clover won't kill him, but it'll like stop him, and then the gasoline will. But then that's like a complete opposite of like what they do at the end of the movie.
Yeah, and all of that.
Anyway, I'm not going to pick apart the lore, because it's like anything like of just in the script or whatever. It is what it is. Like I said, it's low hanging fruit. I don't need to criticize it.
But some of the things they got right, like I already pointed out some of them. But there's another thing that I like that actually would have presented. I think this comes up in one of the sequels I saw, but I can't remember. So maybe next St. Patrick's Day. But I just remember I remember of the lore that I was studying is that they work hard as cobblers to earn their gold. So it's not like this mystical gold that has like all this writing on it. Like, they actually work hard for it, and then they love to hide it and like kind of fondle it, and, you know, be all obsessed with it. And if you find their gold, and they are forced to either let you have it or to grant you wishes. But the wishes can often come with like a price, kind of like a monkey's paw. Mm-hmm. Like I'll solve I'll grant your wish if you solve this riddle.
That would have been a more interesting movie. I mean, like, and just given like the character of Tori, if she showed up and it's just like, I hate it here, whatever, I want to be in LA, I want to be shopping, meets the leprechaun, and then it's just sort of like, well, here's a wish, I can like give you all the things that you want right now, and then have that like backfire on her. Because it's interesting, the poster of the movie, or the movie cover, says her luck, with like Jennifer Aniston like on the cover, because we're promoting her as being the star of the movie. Her luck has just run out, or is about to run out or something. So it's like, there's not really anything in the movie that suggests her luck has run out. I mean, they're all just unlucky for having to be in this movie. But that I would have liked to see like that angle of just like him being more of a wish maker, because like as it is, he's so like two-dimensional. It's just like his whole thing is like, just I want me gold. And the whole movie is just like, where is it? Where's the gold? And it's like, how can I? And it's like that typical like Disney Channel style shit where it's just like, we're going to stretch this out. And it felt like such a long movie. It's only 92 minutes, but it still felt like it went on for 2 hours. I was just like, he's going to keep looking for his gold. And like, no, I can't go over this same beat like over and over again.
Or even the kills, like even the attempts at like violence and stuff like that, which were not choreographed the best. Those were the ones where I was checking out. By the time we got to the climax of the whole thing, I was kind of like, let's wrap this up, please. Yeah. Can we like throw a wrench in the works and like actually like make a left at the track lights? And I feel like they tried to, but we'll get there. But one thing that I do appreciate another thing I think works, and I wish. I mean, it's funny that this works here, but not in Scream 3. I like the fact that he can, like, do any voice he wants to. And especially, like, but I especially like the little child thing, the way it was introduced, again, like, in the opening, like, with him singing Mary Had a Little Lamb and all that stuff, to kind of, like, make you drop your guard and, like, feel like, oh, is there a child in need or something like that? How did you get down here? And everything like that. And then all of a sudden, I thought that was pretty cool.
He can do a cat, too.
Yeah, right. But
can we talk about this like painting team who are called? Okay. I think they're called Three Guys Who Paint.
Yeah, I have it written here somewhere. Yeah, Three Guys That Paint.
Three Guys That Paint, which is like on like a little piece of paper that's like on the side of their truck, and. They only work in 3 colors. They only work in the primary colors of like red, blue, and yellow. Like no like shades to any of them. It's just like solid like red, blue, and yellow. And they're painting this house, and they've like been there for I don't know if it's like days at that point, but like at least hours within like when the movie starts.
Yeah. Yes.
And all they've managed to do is like this one little section, which they already fucked up because they spilt the paint everywhere. And all I can tell is like looking at this thing, it's like, why does this guy, JD, I guess Jennifer Aniston's father, he wants this house to be painted like an American flag, apparently.
Yes. Superman colors, yeah. Primaries during the day.
Yeah, but their logo or their thing on the side of the truck is like the same paint colors, and it's just like someone painted it with that same paint. Just be like Three Guys That Paint.
Right.
And not a single one of these people are competent. Like I guess like maybe Nathan, but we never see him do anything because he's just carrying stuff around. And
Nathan is not competent because he's also teaching when she wants to help paint Tori. I got to keep remembering Tori spelling. But when he's teaching Tori how to paint and she wants to help out and everything like that, and he's like, "Oof, we're out of paint. We need more paint." And they painted literally like the shutters outside of the
It's not even painted though. It's like they took it and just
it's like one shutter. Yeah, well, one shutter is painted, and then the shutter on the other side they were working on got it half done.
Yeah,
and there's like some spots of blue. Also, he's got spots of blue like strategically placed about
both
his
of
biceps.
them. It's like battle like symbols or whatever. Like they're not. It's just to show that we've been painting because someone took a brush and just
so
like
intentional.
Yeah.
They look so intentionally painted on their arms and stuff. It's like you can see the makeup artist going a little bit here and a little bit here. It's but also as far as the Three Guys That Paint, I just wrote, so an outspoken would-be alpha douche, that's Nathan, an unsmart man-child with an undiagnosed mental deficiency, that's Ozzy. And a 40-year-old man, or a child who's somehow a 40-year-old man inside, all went into business together. Yeah. Because also Ozzy and Alex are also wearing those bold primary colors, like the red, the yellow, and the blue, too. I guess that's just what they do. That's just who they are.
But this is the interesting with Ozzy, because they kind of like alluded to him being a child. Like not just like in the head, but they were just like, oh, like I've got these 2 kids here. And it's like, but like physically, I would say that Ozzy was probably the oldest of them. But it's just like that. And that made me think is like, so is this supposed to be like a 30-something-year-old playing like a teenager or something? Like, I don't get it. I'm so confused.
I honestly felt like I could hear the pitch in my head, like them just kind of going like, so we got Nathan, he's like our leading man, big heroic guy, you can see his muscles, we'll have, no sleeves, the ladies will love it. And then as his sidekicks, we'll kind of have like a boy in a man's body and a man in a boy's body, and the boy is like all like a Lenny and George kind of thing, like, I like to pet the rabbits, George, and that'll be the big guy. And then the little kid will be like, you're such a dummy, you better stick with me, fella, I'll show you. It's like, the little streetwise guy, because that's exactly who he is. I wrote down a bunch of the lines that Alex delivers.
They were all so frustrating, because like when he finds the gold coin, it's just like, oh, I know what you do to know if it's real. You bite down on it. And it's just like, oh no, I swallowed it. And I'm like, oh God.
And meanwhile, the little boy's saying things like, boy, I could go for a beer right now. And he sees a car and he's just like, hey, let's hotwire this. Like, he knows how. And then it pays off a little later when the car won't start. And it's like, oh, shoot, the distributor cap. And he runs around. So they're trying to make him like an adult in a little boy's body. I get it. I don't like it. I actually think it might have been more interesting if we could have just seen, like, I don't know, another father and a son, like an actual adult man and a young boy.
Yeah.
And the boy is in danger, like the actual boy who is young and who is unassuming. We don't have to make him dumb, but we can just make him innocent or ignorant.
Or we could have just like, we could have just removed them altogether. Like, why did this need to be painted? Like, why was that a specific beat? Like, I mean, like, we don't really get a lot from the father, but it's just like, I'm sure that there was a more interesting story that could have been told by keeping him around than just like shipping him off to the hospital after getting a bite. And they're like, we have to keep him overnight for a fucking cat bite.
Also, I don't know what the 90s trope was. This happened a lot in the 90s, not just in the horror genre, too. Like, any kind of genre, any television or movie show that you're watching, they loved to have like a perfectly able-minded person play someone who's not smart, who has to talk like at a kind of other something like that. And the whole thing is about like, I am smart, and they're going to go prove it. And all they do is kind of like, they're the reason for the conflict in the movie. And this is a perfect example of that. And I'm so glad we don't do that anymore. Because it's excruciating, like watching him. Well, that I've seen. Yeah. Like, I mean, I think if people were doing it, we'd probably know. Yeah. But let me see. I love the baiting of the child's voice. Okay, we're covering all the bases. I love this. Okay, so before we move on, like, I had questions just about like the Leprechaun, and maybe I don't know if you can shed light on it, but I just wondered like what occurred to you. Okay, because it seemed like when he was talking in his own voice, when he was in the crate. After O'Grady put him in there, Danny boy O'Grady put him in there, and he could hear him, but it was like this echo, like there was a lot of reverb on the voice, and I was wondering, like, does that mean that the Leprechaun has telepathy? So he's not really, because he's not shouting from inside the crate. There's no muffling or anything. It's just kind of like a magical voice in his head. So does he also have, in addition to being able to kind of like make his voice sound like anybody he wants, can he talk in our minds? That was a question.
I mean, I wouldn't put it past him. Like, what we can see is like, this is a very capable, magical little leprechaun. Because he can teleport, like and not just teleport to like, places that he can see. He teleports like 5 miles down the road on the back of the Jeep at one point.
Totally.
Like, he's all over the place, and he's shooting like green beams out of his fingers, and I'm guessing like creating a rainbow, because, and that was another thing. Like, where did and then also kind of going back to like the stupid person being smart or whatever, because he was like, oh, there was a leprechaun, and they're just like, well, what about that rainbow that just magically appeared? And they're like, it's a rainbow. What do you I'm like, how do you think rainbows are made? From rain, you idiots. Like, clearly listen to Ozzy, because this isn't natural, what's happening right now. But just the fact that it leads to this beaten down truck, And even then, nobody's saying anything. That just like, we found the end of the rainbow. Like, this isn't like, I know it's just those two characters, but it's like everyone's so superstitious. Even Tori at a certain point, because like after like she's already like been attacked by the leprechaun and everything, and Ozzy keeps referring to it as a leprechaun, and she's like, it's not a leprechaun, like stop with your leprechaun stuff. And just like, well, what the fuck? And she even says like, I don't know what it is, but it's not a leprechaun. Like, well then what the fuck? Like, maybe that's why she was being so sarcastic. She knew she was a fucking idiot.
Well, because I wrote like when we got to about the past the half point mark, I'm not gonna be able to find it, but just like we were past the 45-minute mark of the movie, and I just remember they were still in denial of the fact that there was even a leprechaun present in the movie, and I was like, we don't have much time left. Again, people should have found out a little bit earlier. I think, and this was the thing that used to drive me crazy as a movie watcher when I was a kid, and I don't see it done all that often now, because I feel like there's a generation now of people my age making movies who were fed up with it then and don't want to make that movie, where just believe me, I know what I saw. I'm the one person who knows what's actually going on in the movie. And for like 75% of the movie, nobody believes that person. That is a frustrating ass movie. That is not a movie I want to return to. I want to find someone who believes in them. I want to see, okay, how are you going to fight it? I want to see, how's it going to fight back? And I want to see if it's well done enough and you have good enough actors, the characters kind of like interact with each other and find out why they're all on this journey together anyway. But I didn't get any of that. But I also wondered, like, did Leppy, I'm going to call him Leppy, did Leppy kill Mr. O'Grady when he was having his heart attack? Did he cause that? Because I thought he did. But then I thought, like, well, if he can cause a heart attack, why didn't he just kill everybody? So maybe he didn't. Maybe Mr. O'Grady just had like a weak
said
heart.
That he had a stroke.
Had a rough night. Did he have a stroke? Is that what it was?
No, they said he had a.
Okay, I didn't see that part.
No. Well, no, because like it looks like he's having a heart attack, but then later when they're just like,
that's right, he is alive later in the movie. I forgot. See, I already forgot that he's alive later in the movie.
When she goes to the hospital, and all I could think of during that scene was just like, wow, usually I really appreciate like hospital chase scenes and like Halloween 2. Or even like Scream 5, or things like that.
Yeah.
And then just like here. And I've never like hated a hospital chase scene more in my life. And
they even tried to do the Halloween 2 thing. Sorry, yes, the Halloween 2 thing, the elevator thing. They tried to do it.
No, totally. But it's like they do this thing in the movie where they like speed up all this shit. Where it's like when he's like ha 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 and finds the tricycle, and then like comes zooming out of the barn, and it's like, what the fuck? What? Okay, first of all, this is so ridiculous, like, as it is, that he's on a tricycle, but you're going to speed it up and make it even more, like, goofy looking. And then he gets the little kid toy car thing later that he's driving down the highway and gets pulled over with.
Yes.
But yeah, in the hospital, he's, like, on a wheelchair. And I guess they had to... Yeah. They couldn't speed that up, or they did speed it up or something, but they... because Warwick Davis, like, wasn't able to, like, operate it as quickly, they had Jennifer Aniston... like moving slowly and shaking so that they could speed her up and make it look like she was running. So that's a thing that they did.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But that's funny.
And the little bell, ding ding.
Yeah, the ding ding. Oh god, like and that was another thing. Like there were a number of things like I was just kind of like, so now he's just improvising. Like he's using the bicycle bell. He's using a bear trap.
Is he like operating it telepathically, or can he just mimic the sound of a tricycle bell?
Again, that would have been awesome if I could have seen him outside just going, and you just hear ring ring,
ding, ding, or something
like that. That would have been great. But his power set is all over the place. I don't understand any of it because now I'm thinking, okay, so then Mr. O'Grady basically just had bad luck. Like he could have set him on fire and delayed something. I mean, he should have just shoved the 4-leaf clover in his mouth or something.
Well, yeah, because as we see, like that's what like I mean, not like fully killed him at the end, but, you know, sort of like weakened him enough to, you know, it's like a final boss battle in a video game. You gotta hit the eye. You gotta like hit one part for the eye to be exposed, and then that's what you have to go in and stab. Which I guess was just the gasoline. So I guess that's the process of killing him. You have to like weaken him with the 4-leaf clover and then light him on fire with gasoline. But like, you could also throw dirty shoes at him, right? to distract him.
There was nothing in the lore that I studied that seemed to comment on killing leprechauns. Like, it doesn't seem like they would encourage it. Granted, if it's a horror movie, I'm on board with it. He needs to be at least detained and stopped. But I guess the moral of at least the opening is like heart-healthy diet, everybody. Because if the leprechaun attacks, you don't want to keel over and, you know, end up in a nursing home. But I also love the fact that like JD... He's featured very lightly in this movie, but I don't know where he went for most of it. Like even at the beginning, before he got
I
guess he was in the hospital.
No. But he later on, but like when they were painting and stuff, he was like around, but we didn't see him. It wasn't until like groceries? She was getting the paint out of the truck, and then Leppy was like tickling her shins or something.
Yes.
And I don't know why she would assume it was Nathan, who's like was
under
clearly
the
just
car.
Behind her. Yeah. And like I don't know like what their relationship is at that point, but her to think that he's just standing there and just like I mean a normal response would be like, oh, what's and you know, Jennifer Aniston does that really good. Where she'd be like, oh, what's that?
That would have been great, actually. Yeah. But that's another question I'd have. Like, okay, like let's say like you're moving into a house you hate, but you might have feelings for like, you know, this guy who's kind of challenging you, and maybe it's not in the way that Nathan is. Like maybe he's not insulting, but maybe he's actually like making you think and making you go like, you know what, I should take a chance on this place. And you know what, it might be really nice when it fixes up. So you start fixing it up and everything like that, and you're working together and you're vibing. Then you go over to the truck and he goes behind you to go painting, and then you feel something on your front of your ankle. Are you going to be like, Nathan? Nathan? Like, it was so ridiculous. It was funny.
The fact that the father comes over and she's and because that's where like this weird conversation comes up where she's like, right. I thought it was him like tickling me, and she's just like, and they're like, well, maybe it was a cat. She's like, no, it was like someone, like I know what it feels like when like guys do
when something a man that puts his hands on my leg.
That made the father like look at her in like a strange way, like what have you been doing? It's just like, okay,
my little girl. But and then he tells her like, well, we got to get you going. She's like, why? Wait, why do we have to leave to the hospital? It's like, because the animal might have rabies. And then they all pick her up to cart her off to the hospital because it might have rabies. Then they're just here, ew. So he goes over. And what does he do when he thinks that it might be a rabid cat? He sticks his hand in this nondescript hole. I guess it was a tree. I don't know. Yeah. If there's a chance that the animal could be rabid, you're not going to reach your hand in and everything. And then he gets bit. Oh, big surprise. And maybe he was worried about him getting rabies after that. Maybe that's where he went. I don't know.
Well, no, he went to the hospital because they took him there, and then they were just like waiting around at the cafe.
I've already lost so much of this movie. I'm glad I have notes, because if I had to just discuss it off the top of my head, there is so much I wouldn't remember.
Because nothing really happened. It's just like, even for like a movie that is like pretty plot driven, there isn't a lot of plot, and that's why it feels so long, because it's like stretched out of just it's like, we know what we have to do, but we're gonna take our sweet time getting there. And like like Leprechaun's entire motivation is just getting his gold. And their motivation is like, either if it's not going to the hospital, it's cleaning up the house. And there's like a lot, they do a lot of that. It's just like, well, we got to get this mess cleaned up, and then like time cut to like later on. And it's just like, okay, you're not going to be more suspicious as to like why the place was trashed or anything like that. Like, you know, you've got this guy. Like, you know, if you feel that he's competent enough to work for you, you should at least like take what he's saying at face value and just be like, okay, well, maybe we should investigate a little further than just like looking behind a box in the basement.
But there is no innate curiosity in any one of these characters. Like even when they call the cops, and they're just kind of, and isn't it? It's Ozzy who calls the cops and tells them that it's a leprechaun. Okay, just because he's saying it's a leprechaun doesn't mean that there couldn't be some shit going down. They're just kind of like, it's Ozzy calling again. What was it last week? Was it aliens or was it, oh no, it was, whatever.
But that's another thing that, I'm glad that they don't really do in movies anymore. It's just like showing police to just like not only like not take things seriously. Because I think there was one, just like jumping to Urban Legend 2. Which I know like you and I have talked about before. There's like the scene at the beginning where there's like the kidney heist and she calls the police to be like, I just woke up in someone's like bathtub, and the operator's like, yeah, let me guess, your kidney was cut out, like stop tying up the lines, and like hangs up and just like, what the fuck? What the fuck?
Yeah, right.
Because I mean, at least when you get a call like that, like it's protocol.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know 100% certain because I don't like have any affiliation with the police. I've never worked as a police officer, but I would think that like when you get a phone call, like regardless of like how ridiculous it is, the protocol is that like someone needs to be sent out there to follow up with it and just be like, what's up? Because there are a lot of instances where, people might be under duress where they, want to contact the police, but just because like the person who's like victimizing them is in the room there and they can't like fully come out and express like what it is that's happening to them, that the police still need to like follow through and show up there. So, okay, strike against the movie for just like, having the police department be like, nah, whatever. But then they do this thing because when she eventually calls and they're like, okay, we'll send someone out there. And then this is actually a part of the movie that I did like. I thought was effective when they go to the squad car and we see that they're calling the cop who is already dead. And you see him in there. Like this is probably one of the only instances of him like using a fake voice that I found effective when he's like, okay. I mean, made no sense how he was able to teleport there.
No, that to know that was, he didn't,
Yeah. But I think the fact that we already knew that cop was dead, because they kept playing with that a few times. Like when she saw the car and she's like, oh, it's the police, they'll help me, and it's like, well, obviously it's the same car that's parked there, so like you're setting up a surprise that we already knew the outcome to, just like shit like that. So I don't know, it's just all very juvenile, which is why I feel like it should have been a Disney Channel movie.
Well, also it's just like the whole thing with Tori. Like, I mean, yes, okay, boo on the police for not following up when Ozzy called, but also boo on Tori for telling Ozzy to call the cops. Like, why was that a good call? Like, I guess if they hear the kid's voice, maybe they won't take it seriously, but you should know they're not going to take Ozzy's voice. See, and this is where it's like having a man in a child's body and a child in a man's body is just like it is what do you call it, a liability, like it's not gonna work in your favor. You need somebody else to stay with your hunky new boyfriend, and you need to go call the cops yourself.
It's funny that you keep saying that he's a man in a child's body, because I didn't get that from Alex at all. I just thought that, he was...
Well, I mean, just the fact that he's like wants a beer, and I wrote some other lines of his too, I can't remember, but I mean the whole time he's just talking about like, I just kept waiting for him to just go like, oh, my rheumatism or something like that.
Well, I think his like he's there because I believe he's the younger brother of Nathan, and then Ozzy is like their friend, so it's like they make up the three men that paint. But it was just like, I don't know who's, I don't know if it's Nathan's company or it's like their father's company, and they just do all the work and he, funds them or whatever.
But it's only three guys, so it can't be his father's. I guess they started it up themselves because they've got, I mean, that said, like, I mean, it is kind of like a child's idea of a paint company. Like, it's, like the fact that they're only painting three colors and that it takes them forever.
We've got blue, we've got red, and we got yellow. But you can't have all three, so, and they're like, well, can you do purple? Like, no. We can do red and blue separately.
Yeah, right. we'll just do one wall red and the wall next to it blue, and your eye can make the purple. Yeah. How about that? But
it really does look like when you're in kindergarten and you're you have like only those colors to work with.
Yeah. Totally. But I think ultimately, like the basic problem of the movie kind of falls in that cop kill for me, just because I wrote while it was happening, this is not handled deftly enough to be scary or funny or even interesting. And I feel like if the ball is dropped, it's usually because something isn't scary or even like potentially scary, like even on the horizon where I can see like, I could see where you would think this would be scary. It's not funny because the humor, I don't understand the humor of him teleporting everywhere while the cop is like, it just got boring. He kept looking around all paranoid and everything, and I was just like, maybe a comedic actor as the cop would have helped. And maybe it would have made him a little bit more bearable as a character when he pulls over. Who the fuck does he pull over? I don't even remember.
It's Leprechaun.
But he pulls somebody over. Oh, that's right. He pulls over the... See? I couldn't even remember that.
Or Lubden, which is apparently his name. Lubda. I don't know how you pronounce it. But that's like officially that's...
sure.
That's what his name is. I'm going to call him Leppy. It's easier.
Yeah. So he pulls over Leppy.
Yeah.
And, okay, again, like in the hands of a comedic actor, like you could take it really, really seriously and act like everything that's happening is normal. Here you've got like a small person in a small car that's like brightly colored and looks like it belongs like in a preschool, playground somewhere. Mm-hmm. And you think he's wearing a mask. Okay, like there's a way to play that. And I didn't feel like the actor, I just felt like he was just kind of playing the easiest thing, which is the arms crossed and okay, whatever you have to do. I mean, like, give us some levels, give us something to to like actually laugh at. But I didn't
think about the cop at all, like, or at least as much as you did. I was mostly like, I just like nothing against Warwick Davis, but I just like, I hate this character. I cannot stand Leprechaun because what I feel like they're trying to do is like make a Chucky, like a Chucky proxy, or just like something similar, like a shorter like pint-sized killer. And the thing with Chucky is that, I mean, obviously Chucky has layers. He is not just like this ancient, or not ancient, he's like 1,000 years old, however old Leprechaun is, who is like, his whole shtick is like, I gotta find my gold. That's it. Like with Charles Lee Ray, it's like he's a serial killer who's trapped inside the body of a doll, and he needs to get out of that. He needs to find a human vessel, but he also wants to like have some fun and kill people. Whereas like with Leprechaun, I feel like there's not really a sense of like he needs to kill people, because we even see like when he gets his gold, before he starts counting it, that's fine. That's all he needed. And then he could stop. So it never really makes him feel like formidable, even though like Chucky himself, I know a lot of people are just like not scared of Chucky because it's just like, okay, well, I can just punt him across the room. But like, as we've seen, if you've seen any of the Child's Play movies, like he can do a lot of damage by being unassuming, by people underestimating him. But at least like with Chucky, because like there's a lot of comedy that's involved in that. But I mean, at the same time, like Chucky lies in wait a lot too. Like he doesn't just like go out there and like pedantically on this one mission of just getting it. He knows that he has to bide his time and plan strategically. And because of that, like Chucky is such a much more interesting killer if we're just comparing the two. And when he does make these jokes, I feel like, he's playing to an audience, like, all of his people, like any like Chucky one-liner he has. It's just like he laughs at his own jokes, and rightfully so, because they're funny. But I feel like with Leprechaun, like all of his jokes are not good. It's like something that like a kid would write, or like an adult who is like trying to pander to like a child's sensibilities. And then he fucking because he's just like, an eye for an eye, ha ha ha, and like whatever like all these one-liners that he has throughout the movie. And I'm just like, I'm over it. I don't care. I don't want to hear you. I don't want to hear your jokes. I don't want to hear you laugh about them. I'm tired of your mission of like finding the goal. The gold, like if you were really that capable, you would get the gold. You would like kill all these people and feel like a real threat. So that's mostly what it comes down to for me. It's just like, I don't like him.
Sure.
I like Warwick Davis, but I'm just like, I cannot fucking stand Leprechaun. And, the sooner that they, like, I actually, like, normally, like, in these movies, like, I don't like to see the killer, unless it's, like, they've really been, like, putting a beating on whoever their victims are or whatever. That, finally, when the person gets the upper hand and is able to knock them down. Like, that might be a time where I'm like, yeah, like, Michael Myers, like, you beat the shit out of him. Not very often. But, like, with Leprechaun, I just wanted them to, like, shoot him every time. Just kill him. Just fucking, like, and the fact that he was, like, one of those, like, what's the game with the mallet where, like, the gopher head or whatever pops up? The weasel?
Oh, with the whack-a-mole.
Yeah, because that's what that reminded me of when you were talking about, like, oh, I'm over here. And that was the whole fucking thing. And I just wanted him to get whacked. And then for them to just like, okay, let's go to LA and shop now. Like, I just wanted that catharsis for Tori, and like, I just like, get the fuck out of here, because this is not only like dirty and disgusting, it's also irritating. It's like, this is not a fun way to spend a summer or even a weekend. Okay, my rant is done. You can.
It was great. In case anyone had any kind of ambiguity around your feelings about the Leprechaun as a character,
fuck
I feel
him.
like it's all washed clean.
He sucks.
I mean, I understand what you say. I mean, you covered a lot, and you covered it beautifully. The only thing I think I could like kind of tack on is, and I think we addressed it a little earlier, but just the fact that, like, one thing about Chucky is that though it varies from movie to movie, he has limitations. Leprechaun, just kind of like endless list of powers and abilities and things that we never really get a firm grasp on, like what he is, what he's from. And the thing is, again, sometimes mystery can work for you if you don't know, like, fuck, he can do that. Like, that can even be a laugh. That can work to your benefit. But this movie never takes that moment. It doesn't really kind of take the moment, like, he disappeared. Leprechauns can disappear, like, just like be more mindful of us as the audience. We are in the movie theater where we want to enjoy ourselves. Give us something to enjoy. And I think, again, I feel like it opened in a way where I was kind of, I didn't have popcorn with me, but if I did, I'd be like, oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, that's what we're watching. All right. But then once we once we got to that fucking house and started introducing like our little motley crew of heroes, I was like, oh no.
I feel like
it never really won me back.
Just jumping back to like the Friday the 13th franchise here, I feel like even if this was like a Jason X, I would have like enjoyed this movie a lot better, because I mean, that's self-referential on it. It's like he came back as like this metal like nano thing or whatever, like, because that's like they're like, I thought he was dead, or whatever the one-liners are in that movie, of just because that's what that reminded me of just like having that kind of humor in place there. Maybe it would have been more fun. Like, I feel like there was really no way for this to be a good movie, other than like what I said before, with just like if it had premiered like 10 years earlier and just like had the luck of being amongst like all those other slasher movies of that time, where it's just like automatically you knew that you were getting a sequel and a sequel to the sequel and all that shit, just because that's what the market wanted at the time. So yeah,
can I also point out the one moment this movie tries to kind of mean something.
Okay.
And it's when little Alex is explaining to Tori that that they needed to steal the gold because they wanted to fix Ozzy's brain. and Tori says, "Alex, you can't fix Ozzy's brain." And Alex says, "I know that, but he doesn't. And then they just kind of walk away from the moment. Like, what the fuck does that mean? What was that supposed to mean? Like, I know that, but he doesn't. You were the one who fucking told him, Alex. Yeah. You're a piece of shit who made him feel bad about himself. He didn't think he wasn't smart until you told him, we'll go get you smart. He's like, I'm smart. And it's just like, no, people talk about you. They say a lot of bad things. It's like, they do? Oh, don't worry about it. They do it behind your back. I'm an asshole. So I thought that was so fucking stupid. Mm-hmm. And also, okay. At one point during the climax, I did write, so who's going to invent the internet so they can figure out about that whole 4-leaf clover thing? It was before they got to the hospital, obviously.
I'm like imagining paranormal activity where they like, that's how they always figure out about the witch coven or whatever. It's just they look it up online because they're like, oh, I did like a trace of that symbol and like I found all this stuff about like it's so the information is so readily available that they're just gonna look it up. How often have you ever found a 4-leaf clover?
Was the first big one.
How often have you found a 4-leaf clover in your life?
Never.
Really?
But apparently I looked at YouTube videos and apparently you can find them by science. I didn't watch the video, so I'll watch it after. But it was never a big, like if I saw like a mound of clover, because I went to a private grade school, so we were up in the hills and there was clover everywhere. So I was always looking when I was a kid, but no, I never found a 4-leaf one.
I found 5-leaf clovers before, but
dude,
is that weird? No, but when I was
the luckiest SOB in the world.
Well, no, when I was in grade school, I would like spend a lot of time just like looking through clover patches and just being like 4-leaf clover, and you know, like it very like few and far between, but it wasn't like I couldn't like find one if I was really looking for it, like, you know, during my lunch break or whatever. It's like what I did at school. Yes. During my lunch break. But I mean, like, it's more common than like they made it seem, like, at least in this movie. But it's funny because it's like the whole bit at the end where she's like, we're not finding it, and Ozzy's just like, well, you just have to believe. And then all of a sudden, like, first of all, there's like this green light surrounding the patch already, which is never explained or anything. But then when she's like, all right, I believe it, and then it's like, oh, it worked.
I didn't mind the green light, actually, because I was like,
no, the green light's fine. The green light was fine.
Yeah.
Because it's fun, you know, it's like
Suspiria. No, but everything else, yes. No, because also there was like a little bit of it coming from the well when she was trying to get the gold that they hid down there, and then there was also, I noticed it wasn't green light, but it was in the kill with the man who was what do you call it? The appraising the gold coins shop for them, and then he kept one. Yeah. The doesn't he say bad shop owner? So the bad shop owner, when he I noticed in his little back room, like all of the floor was painted green, and then there was some green somewhere else. Oh, I think he was wearing green. So I was just kind of like, okay, cool. So we got like the primary colors back at the house. But now that Leppy's like going to step in and move into his power, we got a little green invasion. That seemed kind of cool. At least, you know, for a low budget movie, like I could see them trying. So I appreciated that. But what I didn't appreciate was Jennifer Aniston was not getting paid enough to do an emotional preparation, because when she's trapped in that elevator in the hospital or in the nursing home, wherever the fuck she is, and Danny boy O'Grady is hanging from, you know, like behind her. She looks, and she's got those fucking glycerin tears that like harden, that like start to drip down and then they stop on your face. Yeah. And she's like full on moving, and they don't even know. And I'm just like, oh, you little house on the prairie, this shit. Because I used to do that for what's her name? Half Pint. Anyway, but
no idea.
And it was also after somebody somewhere does. But after I felt like they were trying to do an homage to Psycho with the turning around of Leprechaun in the chair. When she's like, it's almost like Mrs. Bates. And then she turns him around, but it's the Leprechaun. And then, of course, we mentioned Halloween 2. There was also a nod, or not a nod. I felt like it was a complete ripoff of I'm Your Boyfriend Now, Nancy. When
I forgot about that.
When Tori's on the phone. And the little hand a little leppy hand comes out of the phone and freaks her out. And I was like, seen it, saw it like 9 years ago. And homages like that, no, those don't work. Not if you're trying to actually homages for their own sake. You know how I feel about those.
Yeah.
But let me see, is there anything else?
I had a question that I wanted to ask you because this was listed on the
Go for it.
On the IMDb trivia. Is that I guess there was a special thanks to George Lucas because they had to get his permission to, I guess, like release Warwick Davis so he'd be able to be in this movie. And I wanted to ask you about that because you work in the industry, and because that just seems like a very archaic sort of thing where just like the actors are owned by studios or direct or like Disney or whatever. That's just like in the 90s that George Lucas like owned the rights to Warwick Davis that he couldn't like go and act in another movie unless he was allowed to. Like, what's that about?
It's not so much owning the rights, but if you sign an exclusive contract, which Warwick Davis might have just for stability, like work stability, like, yes, put me under contract and pay me whether you use me or not, but I will 100% work in any of the movies that you want to make and that you want to put me in. And he was probably still like, workshopping the prequels and everything like that. But so I mean, it's not like the old days, like early 20th century and mid 20th century, where they had like studios buy out, an actor and then just use them up and then throw them out, and then they have to go find another studio.
Betty
and get
Davis,
right, Joan Crawford. But no, it's more.
Oh my God, could you imagine Joan or Betty in this?
I can.
late in there, because Betty Davis was doing like the Stepmother or whatever that like her last movie was. It's just like if she just held on for a few more years, like we could have got Betty Davis for Leprechaun. Maybe she could have been Mrs. O'Grady.
And if Joan would have held on, she did Trog. So if Joan would have held on a few more years, she could have been. They could have just been like the two ladies who look over the house or something. I don't know. It could have been, or it could have just been them and the Leprechaun. That would have been hilarious.
Whatever happens to Baby Jane with Leprechaun,
yeah. Whatever happened to Lepton, whatever the hell his name is. I wanted to ask you a question. Yeah. Just because we talked about the baiting of the shoe cobbling and everything. Because I was curious while I was watching it. I was like, do you have a shoe cobbling equivalent where if somebody wanted to distract you by just kind of throwing something at you, it would work and you would just kind of let them go?
I'm sure I do, but I don't know if I want to like reveal that publicly for people to know what my weakness might be.
What your kryptonite is.
Yeah.
The only thing I could think is like if somebody just kind of like unpackaged a bunch of Blu-rays and a bunch of CDs and just kind of threw them out, like as they were driving away, just tossed them. No, for me. Like for me, just like if they just threw them out like all over the place, and I was just kind of like, everything has to be in the right case, and now it's all dirty, because Virgo. But
yeah, I mean, I'd be pretty annoyed if someone like came up in my space here and started like just ripping shit off of my movie shelf and throwing it everywhere. Like that might get me to like go and like collect everything, but I think my first instinct would probably be to like charge them and just get them the fuck away from my movies to begin with, and like just try to protect the rest of my movies rather than just like this endless cycle of like picking them up and putting them back in their case and just like hoping that the person will tire out eventually and stop doing that madness.
I mean, I'm sure there are people who theirs is like, creating the perfect macrame knot, or like baking, or taxidermy.
I mean, I think like anyone with like
some dead animals.
Yeah, with some sort of like obsessive compulsive thing, like you could find something. I wanted to.
If they dropped animals, if they just started pitching animals all over the place and they were baby animals, they need to be with their mother. That would work on me. Don't do it, anyone. I'm saying it to them. Not you.
Okay.
Yes.
So they're apparently they had a deal with General Mills in this movie, where they were gonna have Leprechaun eating Lucky Charms. I'll just read what it says here. One scene required the Leprechaun to find and eat Lucky Charms cereal. General Mills gave them permission, but they were so upset when they saw the finished film that they revoked their permission. The filmmakers reshot the scene, replacing the brand name with an obvious spoof. They also changed the kid's line at the end from "Your luck just ran out" to "Fuck you, Lucky Charms."
Right.
So I'm curious as to, like, did General Mills, like, did they change their mind because they saw the movie and, like, they're like, oh, this isn't good? Or they saw the movie and they're just like, I don't know if this is, like, family friendly to be, like, associated with our brand or something like that. Yeah. But I just love the fact that it is kind of a point in their favor that they're the big, like, fuck you line, as it were, is "fuck you, Lucky Charms" at the end, because it's like it works twofold. It's almost like Wes Craven in Scream, where it's just like, and no thanks at all to the Santa Rosa, like, school.
Yes, and
like,
also
I love when like filmmakers get petty like that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. But also it's to make another Wes Craven-esque reference, I feel like that line ended up being this movie's "Welcome to Prime Time, bitch," because I laughed. I was checked out of the movie for a long time before that line got said, and then I was just kind of like, that's funny. But I think it's probably a case of both. Like, they probably because naturally the family-friendly thing, like children, you know, like they don't want kids thinking that they're affiliated with this thing. So, you know, because then they won't buy their product, because big mucky mucks in business think that way. Yeah. But also, I think it's probably because it was a lower quality project, because if it were, you know, kind of like a prestige horror film, and it had, I don't know how prestige it'd be called Leprechaun, but, you know, if it were like if it were better made and had, you know, like some value, like there are adults who buy Lucky Charms when they get high. So that could have been, you know, that target audience right there, but they didn't capitalize on it, and instead, this movie, it sort of, I don't know how well it did initially, like probably not very well at all, but it did like really good in VHS and DVD sales after the fact, and mostly because of Jennifer Aniston being in it. That was like what really, you know, they put her on the cover and you know, had the tagline of like, her luck just ran out. That people, like, having just seen Friends, because I think Friends premiered a year later, 1994. So it's so it's one of the, like, she like shot to stardom, and then everyone's like, earlier, I want to see. I'm pretty sure it was 1994. Okay.
But this movie was actually filmed in 1991, just to give you an idea of like how long it took to.
Oh yeah. No, she was not a star yet. Yeah.
Yeah. But
I feel like Friends was earlier.
Yeah, because like Friends, like they like shot to stardom like really quickly after that, because I think we were like David Schwimmer was in Wolf for like a brief second, or just like little things like that. So it's like they, you know, these are movies that they would have never done like before Friends happened. So just because of Friends, it was like, that's kind of it was almost just by like association that this movie did well in sales and like rentals and all that after the fact. So maybe Lucky Charms missed out on a good thing, because they could have had their free product placement of just being in this movie, and then people would have been like, you know what, like, I just like smoked a big fatty and watched Leprechaun, and I saw Leprechaun eating Lucky Charms. I'm gonna go to the grocery store and buy some Lucky Charms. They still
do that. Everybody looks at that box and knows what that's supposed to be. Like, they even kind of obscure the word Clovers on it, so you can't tell that it's not Lucky Charms. But which I admire. Like, get that.
But that might be the difference of, like, you know, if the store was out of Lucky Charms and there was like, all they had was like Tricks or something, and then being like, well, I'm gonna get Tricks, or I'm gonna go to the next store and look for Lucky Charms. I'm just saying, you know, they should have just swallowed their pride and been like, all right, well, we'll allow this. Like, General Mills.
It's funny because it's funny because there's like, you're making me think about like a placement of Cheerios in Superman the movie, that Cheerios was all too happy to let happen because there was no prior agreement to it. There was no branding for it. They just thought, we need to showcase Americana. This is Smallville, so we'll have his mom feed him Cheerios for breakfast, and there they are on the table because Americana. And it worked, and Cheerios was like, thanks. More people are going to buy Cheerios now because Superman eats them. But
well, I mean, we're comparing apples and oranges here with Superman.
Yeah, right. But also in terms of like Jennifer Aniston and like her, I wonder what it must have been like for her. And if I don't feel like she tolerates some of the lines that she had directed at her from Nathan, like if she were already Rachel, because like when they're sitting in the diner and he criticizes her body, he's just like, Tori, you're way too skinny. Why don't you just, and he's like cutting up parts of his Salisbury steak or something. Meatloaf. Yeah, he wants to give her meatloaf. See, I forgot. But he criticizes her body and offers her meat, and I'm like, she's the hypocritical vegetarian, but he is no better. There's really no... there's really like no...
I mean, like the thing is, like Friends was, there was a lot of questionable things that took place on that show that, she was a part of. So it's there. I think it's just one of those things that's like, okay, like
we can just
the passage of time reveals all. And
I also just wrote, she's not the final girl because the villain of the movie races past her with no problem while she's holding the only thing we know of that can kill him, the 4-leaf clover. She's literally standing in the door. She bursts in. She sees him there. He runs right past her. She's like, oh! Very, very Rachel. Yeah. And there's like, oh my gosh. And then the little Alex takes it upon himself to take the 4-leaf clover from her. Yeah. And I've got to go save Ozzy. And I'm just like, I don't care.
He was getting really... That might have been like the most like graphic part of the movie where he was like slicing his face up there. And I didn't remember if like, did Ozzy like die? Because I had this recollection that like the gold coin was in his belly. And I thought that Leprechaun actually like gutted him and took the coin out. So Ozzy had died. So I was misremembering what happened. So at the end there, I was just like, okay. I mean, like that was like pretty intense of him just like slicing his face up. But it was like the way it was handled, like afterwards they're like, oh, we're all okay, and he's just sitting there like scarred for life and just being like, yeah, that was someday.
Don't they have one of those like 80s sitcom moments where they say something I don't even remember what it is, but they say something to each other and you both and then it's like the credits
roll. That's all, folks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like a Looney Tunes, like
or like one of those at the end of Chips where they both just kind of say like, but this time I'm gonna drive. Freeze frame. Yeah. Credits roll.
Probably. I don't know. I already forget. I like.
Yeah.
Like you, I watched this just a few hours before we did this, so it's even as fresh as it is in my mind, and having lost like a few minutes.
It's already leaving me. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a welcome go. It's like one of those parties that you throw where it's just like everyone be out by 9. That's how I feel about this movie. Anything else you want to add?
I wanted to ask you, are tarantulas native to North Dakota? Because that's where they are, and there's a tarantula in the basement. She was like, that spider could kill us. He's like, it's just a spider. Calm down. I'm like, it's a fucking tarantula. Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, they're like, well, we got to get a spider. And then they're just like, okay, well, what's like the biggest spider that we can get? Yeah, right.
And then just did that.
That's probably exactly what happened.
They probably could have got like just a little tiny thing, and it would have like worked just the same as effectively.
Yeah, no, that's it, folks.
Yeah, well, let's get to no, that's not it, because we're getting to the cherry picker now. So last week we watched Sinister, and of the people who we thought who were most deserving to die were Ellison Oswalt, that was my pick, and you chose Bagul, aka Mr. Boogie, Mr. Snot.
Yeah. And Mr. Boogie on your index finger, yes.
Wow. Okay. 494 votes in total between Patreon, Instagram, and YouTube community section. And 277 to 217. Ellison was chosen as the most deserving to die. I'm sorry, Eddie, it was not Bagul. People did not agree with you. The majority did not agree with you.
Understood. Let's twist the knife a little deeper. Why don't you?
I know. Let's just see what some people are saying here. However, Draven says 100% Ellison. He put his work before his family and ended up costing everyone their lives, which absolutely fair. I agree with that. Let's see what else here. Savage Visuals with a Z there. The whole premise of the movie was terrifying to me, and the foreboding atmosphere was good too. Okay.
All right.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
Yeah, that's fair. No arguments here.
I'm looking for Ellison versus Bagul comments here, though. Okay, Ellison, Ioli Elia. I hope I said that right. Ellison, because Bagul at least knows what it's about. Sure, it convinces children to commit atrocities and steals them away from the world, but it at least. It's upfront about what it's doing and its goals. Very low bar, but still more than Ellison can say.
I love that, that Bagul is earning more respect than Ellison. That's actually really priceless.
Well, that was kind of my thing with the last episode. It's just I don't know if you should be allowed to pick Bagul because he's an entity. He's not a living thing that we can be I think he deserves to die. Nobody commented to that fact, so I don't know if people were.
No, because nobody gives a shit about that because they know what I mean. Also, let me put it on the record right here and now. If I had first choice, I would not have chosen Bagul. I would have chosen Ellison because he is the clear winner. So people who voted for me, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I mean,
but I would have voted for Ellison myself.
If you had first choice and picked Ellison, I probably would have voted for or picked Tracy then. Or the sheriff, or probably more so Tracy, just because shitty parent, you know.
Well, you had a bigger problem with her than I did. I've laid it out there before. I've said if it's somebody who I actually get something when they're on screen, then I'm not gonna want them to die.
I get a lot from Bagul though. I don't want to see Bagul. I want to see Bagul go on and be the reason for more families murdering each other.
I think Bagul deserves to expire more than Tracy does. Tracy was, albeit doing a flawed job of it, but she was just trying to keep her family together. Bagul was trying to devour children. Again, he's trying to devour children.
That's how he was brought up, you know?
Oh, you know
if he could even be brought up, you know?
If he were a human being and you said that, we'd have a lot of angry
comments. If he was a human being, I would have thought that it was okay for him to be the...
Oh, you know what? You won, okay?
Are you calling me a sore winner?
Blown.
All right. And then Mandejo says, even though he's nice to look, LOL, nice to look at, I guess. I constantly wanted Ellison to get out that damn house, and he didn't.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a point for or against him, but.
I think
anyway,
against him.
There we have it. You guys voted, and the majority of you agreed that Ellison had to go. So now I get first dibs on Leprechaun, and I don't know. I'm conflicted now because I'm gonna go with my initial instinct of just Leprechaun himself, because I do consider him an actual flesh and blood being, unlike Bagul. Because Leprechaun, I'm choosing Leprechaun because he's irritating. He's a fucking like infestation that like got into my home, and I'm not able to kill it because it just keeps running around and but popping up and mocking me, and I, to the point where I would probably tear apart my apartment here to try to get to him, only for him to teleport somewhere else. So just the inconvenience of everything that Leprechaun represents, that's why I'm choosing him.
And I'm not going to argue.
You're allowed to.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Because I see your point. You've made your case. And mine, okay, well, this is tough because I have like a cast of people who I would not mind seeing killed. God, who's the worst? I mean, should I just go with my heart too? Because I feel like there's some sure.
Well, we talked about this before. Like, you don't have to go with like what makes sense. You just have to go with like what feels right for you, but what's also the most fun.
Yeah.
We're not playing to win here. We're playing to be heard.
Okay, well then you know what? Just because, you know, she's also got more like just name recognition. Like, I think people will know who she is if they vote for her. I'll say Tori. Even
really?
though because this is the thing. I think it's going to be interesting to see like Leppy versus Tori. Because it actually isn't my first choice, but the reason it's almost like a social experiment. I'm curious to see how people will vote because she is the face on the poster. Aside from Warwick Davis, she is the like she maintains the mantle of final girl, even though she isn't. But I mean, okay, but just the fact that she starts off so incredibly two-dimensionally superficial, like she's a caricature of a caricature, and the fact that like none of her motivations are clear throughout the entire movie, because we don't know ever if she's actually attracted to Nathan or not. We don't know if she's just doing it out of spite just to prove something to him, and if she is doing it to prove something to him, why does his opinion matter? It's like somebody calling her chicken, and then she spends the rest of the movie trying to prove somebody she's not chicken, and that only works in the Back to the Future sequels. And that works for me. And also the fact that like I said, I mean, okay, the absence of final girl energy was felt in a big way in this movie. Like, that could have made all the difference too, because Warwick Davis showed up, and even with the way he was written, like, I still kind of enjoy that character. I can't enjoy Tori. I can't. She has the instrument of his death in her hand, and he runs past her.
Well, she's not
goes,
even.
Oh!
She's not even, like, we've discussed this before. She's not even a final girl by default, of just being like the last, like just because nobody else was there to do it. That, you know, she ended up being the last person there, because we had 3 other people who were capable and did all the work too, while she just stood there. So I mean, I get that.
Yeah. And then she hangs out with a guy who openly criticizes her body and tells her what to eat, and she still wants to hang out with him. No, fuck that shit. I don't.
So we're gonna blame her for what he says.
No, because I honestly, like, he was one of the top ones in my list, but I just don't feel like he's gonna get the same recognition as Leprechaun. So I'm playing the ponies. This is a gamble.
Okay,
it's become something else now. It used to be about vote your conscience, vote your heart, but now it's like, ooh, let's see what they do. Okay. That's what it is.
Okay, I appreciate that. I respect that a lot more than throwing Bagul into the mix there. So anyway, you can.
Oh dear God, this is the last pod you get to talk about Bagul.
Don't vote your heart, vote your conscience. Just put your money where you think the votes are gonna go, I guess. You can vote on YouTube under the community section. You can vote on Instagram. I'll have the post up for that, or the story, and you can vote on Patreon if you're a Patreon supporter. And while we're speaking of Patreon, I want to welcome some new members. We have Anthony Fuller, we have Kayla Tummelson, and we have Oscar Tipton. So welcome aboard to all three of you. If anyone else is interested or would care to, you can support this podcast or my main YouTube channel by going to Patreon. It's the $1 tier gets you early access to the podcast. You'll get to see it several days before the rest of the world. But there's also other options you can check out if you're interested. And it goes a long way in just, helping us make this better. That is greatly appreciated. I also want to thank Andre Felix for helping us editing.
Thank you, Andre.
What else? Oh, right. If you are watching this on YouTube, just know that you can listen to it in audio format. The RSS feed is in the descriptions. And if you're listening to it, you can also watch it on YouTube by going to the Cherry Picker. You can also check out my main YouTube channel, which is just Zack Cherry, or you can follow either of us on social media. Edward, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram that's the @ symbol, Edward is Truth, one word.
And mine is Retro Bitch Face, all one word. I don't need to say the @ because that's implied. You can also, I'm also on Twitter, ZackCherry8, and we have some reviews on Apple Podcast.
Oh, yay.
Yeah. Let me find that here. From iHeart Slashers, dynamic duo iHeart Slashers, who is a Patreon supporter as well. What do you know?
Yay!
Peanut butter and jelly, warm sun, and a cool breeze. Michael and Butcher Knives. Zack and Edward are the perfect pair. Ooh. Equal parts educated and passionate. These two wonderfully complement each other with a vast knowledge of the horror genre. 1 minute, Zack is pulling out an astute 60s Italian cinema reference, and the next Eddie is connecting the emotional dots to a character arc that will bring tears to your eyes.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
Yeah, well worth your time and support, a true gift for any horror fan. I love slashers.
What do you heart here.
Love that.
That's beautiful
and very, very accurate. We do that. And also,
and we bicker every now and then.
From Tummelson 10, who I don't know if that's Kayla Tummelson, who we just mentioned, but lovely duo. It feels like having a conversation with friends after watching a horror movie. Zack and Eddie are super knowledgeable and fun while discussing each movie. So if you love all things horror, please check this out.
Oh, the pressure's on to be more knowledgeable now.
I know. I just assumed that we were. I mean, first of all, thank you before I let that get away. But I just assumed like we were like really annoying and like people were kind of like just like tolerating us. But I mean, I'm glad to know that we know some stuff.
I also feel like the cherry picker is an adequate title for us, because I feel oftentimes like I cherry pick the facts I want to bring up, and then if you can ask me like, what else is this director of Leprechaun, I don't even remember his name, Mark Jones, done? I'll be like, I don't know, I didn't look it up. So, but people got IMDb. You can look it up yourself, kids. Yeah. That's not what we're here for. But I will try to be more informed from now on.
I'm just gonna do the same job that I've been doing, the same adequate job.
And that's who we are. That's who we are.
But the quality will get better, I promise.
Yeah, totally.
What do we got going on next week that you want to tell these lovely listeners?
And see, I have to be better prepared for these, because you ask me and I'm like, I have all these titles in my head that you've brought up, and I'm like, is it what I'm thinking? Like
do you want me to just tell them, or?
Yeah, why not? I'm putting my hands on the side of my face and dropping my jaw for people who are listening to see if that's like, we'll see if I'm right.
Oh, God. Okay. Well, this is a very exciting episode coming up, because we're going back to Scream. We're going back to the entire Scream franchise and more specifically, we are both going to go through each movie with every kill or attack or chase scene or phone call and give our 2 cents on who we think killed who in all of the movies. And obviously, if you have been following my main channel for a while, like my Who Killed Who videos were, I guess like the big thing that like, everyone was following me for. And I haven't covered anything on the new Scream movie yet, mostly because I'm still waiting for that to be released on Blu-ray, just so I can have like as much information in front of me to make an informed video. But in the meantime, this is going to be your earliest insight into what or who I think killed who in that movie, as well as I really hope that Eddie, you and I have differing opinions here, because I want to be challenged. I want someone to disagree with some of the declarations that I've already made previously of who I think killed who. Who killed
Careful
whom.
what you wish for, Zach Cherry. But I'm going to bring up Roman all throughout the first movie.
Okay, I can't wait. But yeah, it's going to be a full podcast of just going all over that. So make sure that you... Make sure that you come back for that. Anyway, thank you for sitting through this slog of a movie with us. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you all, and we will be right back.